The role of women in the Bible has sparked discussions for centuries. Often, we hear about submission, the idea that women should be obedient, quiet, and secondary to men. But is this really what the Bible teaches? Or is there more to the story? In this video, we're going to explore not just the concept of submission, but how some of the most powerful women in the Bible rebelled against societal expectations and changed history. Stay with me until the end, because you might be surprised by what we uncover. Let's start with one of the most debated passages, Ephesians 5:22. It says, "Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord." This verse has been used to argue that women should be subservient to men. But what's often missed is the verse that follows. "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." In other words, submission here is mutual. It's about respect and love on both sides, not domination or control. But that's just the surface. When we look deeper into the stories of women in the Bible, we see a pattern of strength, rebellion, and leadership that defies the stereotype of submission. Take the story of Deborah, for example. As a judge and prophetess, Deborah led the people of Israel at a time when women were expected to stay silent. She didn't submit to the cultural norms of her day, she shattered them. She even led a military campaign alongside Barak, proving that women in the Bible weren't confined to submissive roles but were called to lead. Deborah's story tells us something important. Submission wasn't universal. Women had the right and the calling to rise up when necessary. Deborah's leadership was not just tolerated, it was essential to Israel's survival. Then there's Abigail, the wife of Nabal, whose story is found in 1 Samuel 25. When her foolish husband insulted David, Abigail didn't stay silent or submit to her husband's recklessness. Instead, she acted with wisdom and courage, intervening to prevent bloodshed. Abigail's defiance not only saved her household but also earned David's respect. In this case, rebellion wasn't seen as disobedience, it was praised as an act of wisdom. Abigail teaches us that submission doesn't mean passivity. In fact, it can mean standing up for what's right, even when it means going against authority. Let's not forget Esther, the Jewish queen who defied the king's laws to save her people from genocide. In a culture where women were expected to follow orders, Esther broke every rule. She risked her life by approaching the king without being summoned, a punishable offense. But her courage to rebel against the system saved the Jewish people. Esther's story shows us that submission to unjust laws isn't always what God asks of us. Sometimes, God calls us to rebel for a greater good. Esther's defiance wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was strategic, bold, and just. And then we have Mary Magdalene, who defied expectations in a different way. As a woman in a deeply patriarchal society, her voice should have been dismissed, her testimony ignored. Yet, after Jesus' resurrection, it was to Mary Magdalene that he appeared first, entrusting her with the news of his return. She didn't shrink back into submission, she proclaimed the message boldly. Mary's rebellion against the norms of her time was grounded in her role as a witness to the most significant event in history, the resurrection of Christ. The Bible doesn't present submission as a one-size-fits-all rule. Time and time again, we see women who challenge authority, defy unjust rules, and carve out their own paths with God's guidance. But here's the twist. While the Bible includes calls for submission, it also celebrates rebellion when it serves a higher purpose. These women didn't conform to societal expectations, they broke them. And in doing so, they fulfilled God's will in ways that submission alone could never have accomplished. And this is where the true power of the Bible's message on women lies. It's not about a rigid, one-dimensional view of submission. It's about discernment, knowing when to follow and when to rise up. Whether through Deborah's leadership, Abigail's wisdom, Esther's courage, or Mary Magdalene's boldness, the Bible makes one thing clear. Women are not just passive followers. They are active participants in God's plan. So, is submission in the Bible about oppression? Or is it about something deeper, the ability to discern when to follow and when to lead, when to submit and when to rebel for a greater purpose? Let's leave you with this thought. The women of the Bible didn't just accept the roles they were given, they reshaped them. And in doing so, they remind us that true strength is not just in obedience, but in knowing when to challenge the status quo. Tell us, which story of rebellion inspired you the most? If you found this video insightful, like and comment below.